Hey guys, Daniel James here, and what we're going to do today is take a look at comparing Audiobro's LA scoring strings with East West's Hollywood strings. Uh, these two are very comparable at the moment. They both cost about the same, and they both offer to do the same thing, which is offer you that realistic string sound. Just a note first of all that I'm using Audiobro's LA scoring strings full edition and East West Hollywood Strings Diamond Edition, which is their full edition. So I've got the full package of both. And just a disclaimer before I get started: the way I'm going to be showing these libraries is how I would use them, and I have a relatively modest system, so I should probably start there. So this is my system here. We're running Mac OS X Snow Leopard 6.6 quad core, and I've only got 6 gigs of RAM, and up until this point that's never been a problem. So that's what we're working within, and I will be showing this how I would use it. So if I miss anything out, I apologize, but I'll try to cover a bit of everything. So the best way to do this, I guess, is to take a look at what each offers. So over here in East West Hollywood Strings, we have all the string sections. So we've got first violins, second violins, basses, cello, and violas, and each one comes with a divisi folder. If you're not sure what divisi is, it's basically when a section is broken down into tables, which is a smaller amount of players. So if you end up with 2 notes going to the first violins, they'll split it amongst the divisi. If you're still not sure what it is after that, I'm sure a quick Google search or Wikipedia page will answer that in a bit more depth for you. Anyway, so and East West Hollywood Strings has a folder called the Quick Start HS, which means Hollywood Strings, which contains the lightest versions of each of these sections here. I have the Diamond Edition, which came on the hard drive, so these are all 24-bit samples. So now if we compare that directly with LA scoring strings, which is here, we have both 16 and 24-bit, which came on DVD. And personally, I always prefer to go for the smallest, lowest processor intensive samples, just because I personally can't hear a difference between the two. So I always choose 16-bit, and for the purpose of today I will be going with 16-bit because that is how I would use it, and this is a look at how I do it. And as you can see, this offers relatively the same options. So you've got basses, cellos, violas, violins, and an ensemble, which is comparable to the full strings in East West. And if I just click into the cellos, you can see that you get a first chair, which is a soloist, one player by themselves. Then you get the divisi sections, which is comparable to the divisi here, and you get the full mix, which is comparable to this here. So as you can see already, they're very similar in what they offer. So if we take a look at the cello, so you get long patches. If I load up the cello here, so long, powerful system. Short, tight, short, loose effects, key switch, legato, slur, bow change, blah blah blah. And over here we've got espressivo sustains, harmonics, legato, non-espressive sustains, sordino, pizzicato, spiccato, staccato, and tremolo. So they're basically offering the same thing, although I see that Hollywood Strings has got this bow change and slur, so we'll take a listen to those in a minute. So I'm guessing the thing that most people want to see is how they sound up against each other. And the way I always write my music is I always layer stuff with Project Sam Synphobia. So for the sake of the first few demonstrations here, I will be using Synphobia and then augmenting it with each of LA scoring strings and Hollywood strings. So let's get started. So what I've done here is I've written a short little, just basically block chords with Synphobia strings, which sounds like this. So that's just a nice simple chord progression just for me to try the sounds over the top of. That should be Hollywood strings. Let's put Hollywood. So first off, one of the big talking points between LA scoring strings and Hollywood strings is the play engine. Now this has been getting quite a bad reputation from what I've read and heard, and so we'll be looking at how long the patches take to load and how much memory they take, and then how much difference there is between. So so what we'll do is we'll start with violins 1 in LA scoring strings 16-bit. I'll tell you what, I'll do it 24-bit just so that it's a bit more fair. Okay, so 24-bit violin 16 players full mix, and what we'll do is we'll start with the lightest legato patches that each has. So violins 1, just the legato patch, so no portamento or glissando. So first off, let's see how much memory it takes and how long it takes to load. Okay, so that's loaded, and I have full access to my DAW. I can do things while that's loading, and that has taken 68 megabytes of RAM. Okay, so now let's compare that directly with play. We're going to look in the long patch. Now these have got quite a few. Actually, no, let's start with the lightest. That's what I said. So what I'll do is first violin's legato slur, and that's the lightest of the legato. So we just add that in. And as you can see, it's a little bit longer to load, and I don't have access to the DAW while it's loading, so I just have to sit and wait for it to finish doing what it's doing. Okay, so already there's a bit of a, for me personally, there's a bit of an issue with Hollywood strings. That wait time, whilst it wasn't long, it was long enough for me to have to sit and not be doing anything, which I personally don't like. But okay, so let's compare the sound, because that is going to be the most important thing. So first off, let's go with LA scoring strings, and then when this bit here finishes, it will play the Hollywood strings version. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in so you can tell when the change is. And this here is a line I played in once, one pass, just played it in. So it may, if you know, please don't judge my playing, but and then I just copied it directly across. So it's the exact same line going through each of the libraries. So let's take a listen. So, first impression on that sound to me was Hollywood strings has got a much softer sound than LA scoring strings. But when it came down to it, they didn't sound that different to me personally. I mean, if that was in a track, personally to me, they sounded just about as good as each other. So then, you know, my choice would be which one is taking up the least amount of memory. So in this situation, I would probably have picked the LA scoring strings over that. However, I also have the option, if I wanted to try a bigger patch with perhaps, let's try bow change legato. So let's try first violins. Let's just replace that. Okay, so this, I mean, I've got plenty of time to talk here. So while this loads, as you can see, Hollywood strings has got a lot more options with regards to the actual type of sound that you can load in, whereas LA scoring strings has got, if you're talking legato, you've got another option, which is the portamento, which is a slide between notes, and glissando, which is where you're really sliding between the notes. Whereas Hollywood strings has got these kinds of extras like bow change, which is where the bow would change with every note, which I personally think actually sounds better. But let's take a listen. Okay, that was a bit of a loading time there. So now let's take a listen to see how it sounds up against the bow change. So that actually sounded pretty good. Let's take a look at how much memory this took. That took 550 megabytes of RAM. Now, I believe I forgot to check how much memory the other one took up, so I'll just load that up for the sake of fairness there. So the memory footprint. That's loading a bit quicker now because it's already in RAM. The memory footprint between the two. Let's take a look. Let's let that load in. So the lightest violin patch in Hollywood Strings is taking up 311 megabytes of RAM, and LA Scoring Strings is taking up 68. The sound is pretty comparable. But the difference is like over 200 megabytes in RAM. So, you know, it comes down to how big your system is. So, now let's move on to cellos. Same line, but this time what I'll do is load up the cello legato slur. Wait for that to load in. And we'll come out here to the 24-bit cello full mix. That's all the cello players together, and we'll go with the legato. So again, that loaded a lot quicker than the other, and this takes up 74 megabytes of RAM, and the play cello is taking up 192. So let's take a listen. Now, the eagle-eared amongst you may have noticed that Hollywood Strings only played the first note there, and I can only put this down to a play bug. Now, this is becoming quite a talking point on the internet, you know, from when you read forums and reviews, is that this play engine hasn't quite yet matured yet, which I fully agree. It seems to have its bugs and kinks. Now, you see, the problem I'm taking with that is it's a full-priced premium library. It costs about $1,000, and in my opinion, if you're expecting customers to pay $1,000 for an engine, it should be as good as or better than the competition that's already been around. If not, you know, they could have stuck with Contact, but they chose to go their own way. And personally, I mean, this is essentially a schoolboy error here. So if I play, if you look down at the keyboard at the bottom, I play one note. So this first note plays fine, but if I try to change note, you can see that the note isn't actually changing. However, if I let go of that note and then let go of the other note, you get a pop. What I actually figured out was wrong is that this patch isn't actually loaded, so you know, you have to sit through yet another interesting load screen here. One of the positives I've noticed with this library is it gives you time to be with yourself. You know, you could write a poem, you know, get a cup of coffee, perhaps contemplate the purchase, you know, plenty of time to be by yourself with this. So okay, so after the initial load, I've now loaded in the so now it's working. Just going off on another little rant again. You know, it's such a shame that this engine doesn't work and is quite as heavy as it is, because the sound of Hollywood Strings is actually pretty fantastic and it works perfectly with Symphobia. However, I'm having a few issues with play, and it's leaving a sour taste in my mouth. So now let's compare the LA Scoring Strings with the Hollywood Strings cello. So there you go. There's a good look at a few of the instruments there. Well, two to be specific. So as you can see, the sounds are relatively comparable. You know, that you can compare them, and they're not too dissimilar. If I had to say between the two, Hollywood Strings, in my opinion, has a nicer sound. It's a lot softer, and it feels a lot more pre-mixed, and works better with Synthobia. Whereas LA Scoring Strings has a really good sounding legato, and it's really light. So it's you're getting a very similar sound for a lot less memory, a lot less system use. So there's the first question you need to you need to ask yourself when purchasing the library. What do I want? Do I want do I want the ease of use, and the lower system, or do I want the specific sound that you get with Hollywood Strings? It's really hard to compare these two because the actual sound of them is quite similar. It comes down to personal preference at the end of the day, although there's no denying the fact that Hollywood Strings does take up a lot more RAM and take a lot longer to load. That's the two things I'm noticing at this point. So what I'll do now is I will close these down, and what I wanted to do is show how easy they are for writing. And for the purpose of this one, I'm going to compare it to Synthobia as well. So what I'll do is I'll just get rid of this. Delete. No. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close Synthobia here. Synthobia is already loaded into RAM, so this will load super quick. And so when I'm writing music, I tend to boot up a ensemble string patch, and then I just play. You know, I'll just play stuff that I've got in my mind and see if anything works. So what I'll do is I'll load up Synthobia here. And that's loaded pretty quick, loading into RAM, and I have access to DAW. So what I do is I just put it on like that, and I'll just So I'll do things like that, and you can compare again. LA Scoring Strings has an ensemble patch. So what we'll do is we'll load up the large one here, the sustained Espresso 3-layer version. So Synthobia is taking up 63 megabytes. LA Scoring Strings is taking up 26. So and they're mod wheel controllable. Just notice that I've gone off the screen. I would still, between the two of these, I would still pick Synthobia personally, because it has the wider sound, and it's perfect for that. And so now let's just load up the full strings. Whereas Hollywood Strings has a more a different approach to it. So what you do is you get the full strings, but then you also get a legato instrument on top of that, which I actually really like. So let's load this in. Now this is the biggest problem with this patch is, as you can see, wow. Okay, so this is going to take quite a while to load. But it's one of those things. If this was in contact, where I could, perhaps access my DAW while this is loading, it wouldn't be so bad. I severely dislike the fact that I have to sit and wait for this to load, and it takes so long to load. A lot of people will tell me that it's loading so slow because I'm running off the hard drive it comes on, which is a 7,200 revolutions per minute hard drive. So it's a normal hard drive. Most people will say I should move to a solid state drive, which is essentially like RAM in itself. It's flash memory, so it would load a lot quicker. However, I haven't had to change my my process or the way I work for any other library, and I don't think I will do it specifically just for one string library when there's competition which can do the same thing on a system I've already got, in my opinion. So let's just take a listen to the play version. Just move the microphone a bit here. So again, this is, you can see the keyboard down the bottom, so I can. But we've also got the legato on top. So I actually prefer the way this is set up, where you've got a legato instrument on the top, and then as you go down, it moves into the more pad-like. It's a lot more inspiration when you've got something that sounds good with the legato on top. However, as you saw, it took almost a minute or so to load, and it takes up half a gigabyte of RAM, comparable to the 26 megabytes of LA scoring strings and the 63 Symphobia. And between the three, I would pick Symphobia because it's got a good sound. It's got a good sound. It feels quite playable. There is no legato in Symphobia, so you know, you couldn't use it as the finishing touch, but it is pretty good. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll compare some of the other articulations. So what we'll do is we'll load up the, let's go with the full strings tremolo. We'll start with Hollywood strings. So let's load up the tremolo patch. Just double click this, replace all. Please don't be a long one. Okay, this doesn't look like it's going to be a really long load time. And again, let me just re-emphasize the fact that I actually genuinely love the sound of Hollywood strings. I just, you know, this load time and the amount of footprint it's taking when other libraries are doing similar things for, you know, no load times at all with, you know, smaller footprints. I just wish that they would have, you know, gone in the same boat, so to speak. So we've got 236 for this tremolo patch here, and what I'll do is I'll load them all up ready to go. So Symphobia, string, ensemble, tremolo, and then LA scoring strings, ensemble patch, tremolo. What I'll do is I'll just record some I'll just record a passage, and then I'll play it between the three. Okay, just something with a bit of dynamics. So I'll just take this. I don't think I actually moved the dynamics all the way up to the top, so what I'll do is I'll just throw in a very cheap sounding, just basically a pyramid going on here. So what I'll do is I'll take that and I will put it the exact same thing between all three, so you can see the difference. Rename these. Okay, so these are all the exact same thing, and let's take a listen to how they compare. Now LA scoring strings. Now Hollywood strings. So the thing I noticed that Hollywood Strings and Symphonia actually sounded relatively relatively similar, sorry, and I don't believe Hollywood Strings had mod wheel. So if I just copy all of this, paste it onto the expression. So yeah, the sound I actually again preferred Symphonia for the one thing I've noticed that if you've got any ensemble stuff, Symphonia seems to handle it pretty well. LA scoring strings, the sound personally to me for ensemble doesn't work quite as well as Hollywood Strings. So let's just remind ourselves of the size of each. So 236 megabytes of RAM for I loaded the ensemble tremolo. So for the ensemble tremolo it's 236. For LA scoring strings it is 16, and for Symphonia it's 26. Personally, I'm not sure why plays is 200 megabytes more when the sound is, actually pretty similar. I'm not sure what it's doing that needs the extra memory there, but okay. So one thing I haven't pointed out so far is that the reverb on that I'm using. I'm not using the built-in reverb of play because I wouldn't use that when I'm actually composing. I have a bus here with my Arts acoustic with just full strings generic on top. If I take that off, so that's what each sounds like without reverb. So yeah, they're all pretty similar. So that's a basic comparison between all of them. So this is the first video of a few I plan to do. This was more covering what each library is, and in the next few I want to cover the shorts. I want to cover spiccatos and things such like that. Effects, what effects each one comes with, and then I want to show the performance of how each one handles carrying an entire string section. I would never normally use one library for an entire string section. I would normally use Symphonia to cover most of it, and then augment it with either Hollywood Strings or Hollywood Strings or LA scoring strings. But I want to show how they how they both stand up being used quite heavily. Yes, so I hope you enjoyed this first look at the the comparison between the two. If you have any comments or suggestions of what you would like to see in the future videos, perhaps you'd like me to recover some of the ground I just did, let me know, and I'll try and make sure it gets put in the next videos. So I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.